Welcome to the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where we take a deep dive into different educational topics to help you optimize your life. And then in today's show, how to optimize your wellness journey. I am here today with my partners in crime in the First Form app, Miss Lacey and Mr. Montae.
Hello.
I'm glad you got it. I was like, you better get it right this time.
Getting there, ladies first. I was so used to doing just you, and then we got her now, and we're rocking. Listen, I love our online community, man. Like it is, I tell people all the time, thank you. And it truly is created like the best possible job that I could have. And, I just got done spending some time with, three of the couples out of the group, and we hiked in the mountains and ran a half marathon, and like it was just awesome, right? And it's like I get to do this for work. I get to change people's lives, and these people become friends, and it's such a cool aspect, right? From such a neat standpoint.
Yeah.
Thinking about that, because you have a guy that you coached that you're still friends with, and it was like the first guy you coached. Was it like 10 years ago or something like that?
10 years ago, or you're going 20 years ago? You're talking about
20 years ago? Yeah,
yeah. So and I'll share that story. It was awesome, and I got to introduce him, to Sal, and so we were in Louisville, doing the half Ironman, and they're now friends. They're really good friends of mine. But Kevin Henchman is his name. He was my first ever personal training client. So I'm 19 years old, in college, and started doing training. He was the first individual that I worked with, right? Lost 60, 80, 100 pounds. And it was 100. I don't think he was that heavy, but 60, 80 pounds, right? And he ran a half marathon with me. I remember we did the old 5K pump and run in Columbus, Ohio. And you guys should go back and look at Jeremy was not doing the Mullins trot. I was reminded by one of my friends, like, you ran a sub 6 mile in that first pump and run. And I'm like, I did? Like we were having that conversation. I'm like, I don't remember being able to run that fast. But 100 and whatever, 70 some pounds at that time, 19, 20 years old. And fast forward, doing the half Ironman with Dennis, right? And Dennis McLaughlin, one of my first winners, when I put on the First Form hat and coaching within the First Form family, and they were both at that event. So Kevin and his wife drove down, just to support for the weekend, say hi. And then of course, Dennis was there staying with me to do the event. And it was just kind of cool because I'm looking at it like, here are really two families that I consider, friends, right? And they were clients of mine at one time, and it's a cool aspect, right? And not all people that we work with will become friends, because some of them may live across the country, right? You might not get to see them, but it is true, like we go into this and we change people's lifestyle and we change wellness, and then we become friends with them, right? And I'm going to step on a little soapbox with this, and I'm sorry, but I made this post yesterday. It's one of the things I'm so frustrated with in this era of social media, right? So you see all these people that are quote influencers, and they're influencing whatever arena they're influencing in, but all they show is their self, and that's it. I'm like, well, if you're a wellness coach, show me the people that you're influencing. Show me the results, right? Are you really doing the things that you say that you're doing? Can you go out and spend a weekend with the people that you're influencing and live the same lifestyle, or is all that an effing show? Right? Like, and I feel like we got a lot of that in that social media right now, that it's just a show for social media and they don't live that life. So for me, I take that as a compliment, as I become friends with a lot of people, because hey, what we talk about on here is transparent. What we talk about in the app is transparent. It's education, and these are the people that we are, right? And same thing with you guys. Like I consider you friends, but you're also colleagues now, right? And you came from clients. And I hope that first time that you got to meet me in person, you're like, yep, he's as short as he looks, but he's sorry.
I was like, man, it's like a bowling ball. He's short and just strong.
But I hope it was like, yeah, he's no different, in his social, videos and everything, as he is in person, right? And that's the thing I always strive for, from that aspect. So it's just a cool thing for me, is like, yeah, that was the first person I ever, trained, and now we're going on a 20-year, friendship, and then of course Dennis, the first person that we had, theoretically now is Team Alpha, our first winner ever. That is once again going on 10 years of friendship, and we do these half Ironman and Ironmans every so often. So great stories.
I said
Yeah.
10 years. I was trying to make you feel better.
Mhm.
Trying to make you feel younger.
But sorry, I'll hop off that soapbox. Let's talk about, okay, how people take on their wellness journey from an exercise standpoint, right? So this is going to be very broad, okay? And once again, we don't get caught up in, hey, you should do Orange Theory, you should do F45, you should CrossFit, you should power lift, you should do X, Y, or Z. And I think once again, that's where in the social media world is why people are so confused, because you get people out there that bash one quote style of training and promote another, and people are just confused, right? Versus
Yeah.
we take this step back and be like, hey, here are the basics. Here's what we need to do to produce results. Then you can find the niche or the program that you like and works best for you from that standpoint. But what are the basics that we need to cover? Okay. Now, what we teach within our community, right, is 45 to 60 minutes of walking every single day, because as a society, we do not move as much, right? So we want people to go out and move at a low intensity more often. So we recommend that everyone walks 45 to 60 minutes a day. This can all be in one session, or it can be broken up in the day. Now, this is more lifestyle than it is anything else, but we do recommend that people walk 45 to 60 minutes because it optimizes calorie burn and also fat loss, but it's also just good in general for the individual. Now, as far as their specific strength and conditioning program, we recommend that, hey, most weeks they're hitting 3 to 5 sessions at a kind of a minimum. If people want to do 6 days, they want to do 7 days, I'm totally fine with that. But at a minimum, 3 to 5 sessions of resistance training, and then getting their heart rate up a few times via cardio or HIIT training, right? And then specifically what we want to touch on is the benefits of resistance training, why it's so important, and why it shouldn't be left out. Okay. Now, going back to the social media soapbox, I do think it's gotten better over the last decade, that resistance training has fallen into favor when it comes to fat loss journeys, because you go back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when you spoke fat loss, everybody just did cardio, right? So let's just go do a bunch of cardio. That's how you lose weight. So I do think in that aspect, it's been a good turn, and a good thing that we see in social media is there are more recommendations for resistance training. Okay. So with that being said, let's dive into the benefits of resistance training inside of programs, why it's important, why we want people to do it, and why it produces results.
And you just kind of stated something that was me to a T in the beginning of my journey. I was just wanting to lose weight, not happy with where I was, and I just did a bunch of cardio, being super frustrated, not seeing the results I wanted. So then when I finally got into the app, worked with you, I had been resistance training, but not probably as often, or pushing myself maybe as hard as I should have been. So that's kind of where I wanted to start, like lifting weights and finding a program I enjoyed that involved resistance training was a game changer for me, for my body composition. So that's really the main thing I have gotten out of it. And I try and educate my people on that as well. Like, not only is resistance training beneficial for, an absolute giant list of reasons, but for the main reason for me, I enjoy it. I'm stronger. And right now that I have reached my goal body weight, it is so much easier to maintain. Like, I don't need to, if I'm gone for a week on vacation, I can do some pretty basic body weight stuff and not have to worry about, oh, am I losing gains, or am I, no, it's so much easier to maintain once you put in that work on the front end to build that muscle.
It kind of goes with what we talked about on the last podcast, and look what I still got here, right?
Oh, Joe,
So,
Jerry.
yeah,
Working real hard over there.
the cardio will just make less Play-Doh.
Yeah.
The resistance training will shape the Play-Doh, right? And I think, I'm glad you said that, because I made that general statement that it's gotten better, right? But still, here you were once again starting your wellness journey not that
Yeah.
long ago, and saying, no, that was my thought, and my concept was I just need to do more cardio to lose weight. But we want that resistance training really to be the primary strength and conditioning that our weight loss clients are doing, right? We're not saying that we shouldn't do cardio for cardiovascular benefit.
Right.
But if we're speaking fat loss and we're speaking body composition, and I would even say long-term health, then we want to make sure that we are strength training throughout the week. And that is a primarily goal of our exercise, right? Because once again, we got this walking over here that we say do 45 to 60 minutes of, which is kind of getting us moving, having some cardiovascular benefit. So if you're doing your resistance training, that's where you're really going to get the bang for your buck when it comes to overall health and fat loss.
Yeah, and just going off of that too, something that was said there is like a lot of people get that word, the weight loss, stuck in the head
Mm.
and- instead of the fat loss. So yeah, weight loss. If you have 100 plus pounds to lose, 50 plus pounds to lose, yes, we want to lose weight, but we want to make sure that weight is primarily coming from body fat and not losing muscle tissue, because losing weight can be water weight, muscle tissue, and body fat. We want it to primarily be body fat. And another reason why that resistance training is just so important, because, speaking of body fat loss, in a reduced caloric diet, we want to make sure that we are maintaining as much muscle tissue as possible. And very important for resistance training, like coming down to the body composition, like you mentioned, the way we look when we get to that goal. Because working with me, back in the day, when I was kind of under you, kind of not doing the stuff, kind of, going the cardio route, not eating enough protein, lost a lot of weight. And when I lost that weight, I got to my goal, right? I was there. I was like, this is the number I was looking for on the scale. But then when I looked at my pictures, when I felt the strength I had, I was like, this isn't it. This isn't where I want to be. I want more muscle tissue and I want to look better. I just kind of almost looked like how I already looked, just a smaller number on the scale, which is not where I want it. And when I really realized the resistance, how important resistance training and protein was.
Yeah. So, a couple of things that resistance training is doing on a cellular level is when we train resistance training, okay? And I'll take a step back in a minute and talk about what is resistance training. But on a cellular level, you're helping your body utilize carbohydrate better, right? So if someone is a diabetic, if someone has insulin resistance, by actually training the muscle tissue, you're going to be able to utilize carbohydrate better, which is going to decrease the risk of developing insulin resistance or diabetes, right? Because our body wants to use that blood glucose and it wants to store the blood glucose as muscle glycogen or use it, right? So that's a benefit. Both you touched on this. When we do resistance training, that's how we increase muscle tissue. Increasing muscle tissue is going to increase caloric expenditure. Therefore, you're going to burn more calories just existing. So what Lacey was talking about, like it's easier to maintain weight now and maintain body fat because she's got more muscle tissue, which is burning more calories. Okay. Also, resistance training inside of a reduced caloric diet. Resistance training combined with increasing protein in that reduced caloric diet is going to help us maintain the muscle tissue, right? Because we don't want to lose any muscle tissue when we're losing body fat. I see it all the time. People are like, okay with it, right? They're like, yeah, if you lose 15 pounds of weight on your journey, 10 of it can be muscle. I'm sorry, 10 of it can be body fat, and 5 can be muscle. Like it's okay. And I'm like, no, right? Because I've proven, and we've proven over the course of the last 10 years, 15 years, that you can lose body fat, significant amounts of body fat, and not lose muscle tissue, right? And most people will gain muscle tissue because of the stimulation and resistance training and the increase in protein in the diet. Okay. So remember, resistance training for our new folks, it can be anything from body weight to bands to kettlebells to machines and free weights. Okay. So when we say resistance, don't think it has to be like I'm going to the gym and deadlifting, squatting, and pressing, which I love those movements. I think we should do those movements, but I don't want you to think that it can't be body weight. It can't be done at home with minimal equipment.
Yeah, I want to stress that too. I've had a lot of those conversations this week, like people thinking they aren't going to have success because they don't have access to the gym, but they have stuff at home. I'm like, hey, you have a perfect setup to really get some stuff done. And so it's just finding again the things you enjoy, something you're going to stick with the equipment you have, and just being creative. But I think that another thing I've really talked about with my people this week, I've had a handful of individuals a little bit older that they've talked to me about how, since implementing resistance training, just how much better they feel, but they're just stronger. And as we age, obviously we know that that's important. We want to make sure we keep that strength up, but they're able also, just to keep up with the grandkids, and they're running around and they can pick them up and they can go play in the yard. Like, think of all of the things it's going to do for you building that lean muscle tissue now through the resistance training that's going to allow you to live the life you want to live in the future. I don't think that a lot of people have. I sometimes still don't. I have to remind myself, like, yeah, I want to look good, I want to be strong, but there's other applications for that muscle further down the road.
Because you're youngin'.
Well, I know.
Listen,
No, I don't feel like it.
It's a normal process.
Yeah.
In my 20s, fitness was about looking better to attract females, right? Like I'll say
Sure.
that's yeah.
Your one girlfriend, Montae.
Yeah, like Montae's, hey man, he got one. He's like, all right, got her.
Got it.
Okay.
Nailed it.
And that's normal, guys and gals. I want you to understand that. And then as you get experience in this world and you age a little bit, right? I'm there, right? Like I am getting into it into my 40s, like with pulling this tendon off the bone, and they're like, I'm like, I warmed up, I deadlifted for 4 weeks before, and I gave them all this stuff, like trying to justify, like, what happened, and they look at me like, it's common for middle-aged males, and I'm like, oh, so you're saying I'm getting old.
Ouch.
But yeah, so as we age, is a reflection, and that's what we teach though a lot inside of our group, and try to get people to understand we're working towards the future, because when we look at the research and we look at the data right now, muscle strength and having muscle tissue, if you maintain that, and those older individuals, so when we get up into our 70s, 80s, and 90s, those that have more muscle tissue, those that have more strength, live a longer, healthier life, right? And I'm saying that longer and healthier. So we're not talking about extending life where you can't do things. We're talking about extending life where you're still able to go out and make these things. We even had our team, what was it, 3 weeks ago? Hey, go test and take a 35-pound kettlebell in each arm and walk with it for 90 seconds. Right. So had people go out and do that. And it was just amazing. People come back and be like, I couldn't have done this, 6 months ago. Or, maybe new people were like, Jeremy, I struggled with it a little bit. And I was like, that's okay. We want to get to where we can test ourselves each year. And if you can pick up 35, pounds in each hand and walk with it for 90 seconds, you're in pretty good shape in the sense of being able to do most things in life.
Yeah,
Very good point.
More like just real life application, like being a parent and thinking about resistance training and strength. Just yeah, I mean, there's times I do things and I'm like, man, I would not have been able to do this a long time ago. Like example, getting my 3-year-old out of the car while she's sleeping and having to carry a car seat in the other hand, like simple everyday things, helping friends move, all these things that you moving furniture around the house. Like there's just so much more than the way we look when it comes to overall just living an overall happier and healthier and better life when it comes to resistance training, and doing the things that we implement.
100%. A couple of things, to look at. You guys can share, these aspects too, but like it decreases blood pressure. A lot of times people think, oh, just, cardiovascular helps decrease blood pressure. No, when you exercise with resistance training, you're going to decrease blood pressure. You're going to release endorphins. So it's going to make you feel good from a physical standpoint. It can help with mobility, because a lot of times when we're lifting, right, and we're going through those movement patterns, that's increasing our mobility. Okay. So all those are three more benefits, right? So decreases blood pressure, increases mental capacity in the sense of you feel better, right? So you can say decreases the symptoms of depression or mood, because it uplifts it, right? But then also on the perspective of the mobility, right? We're moving through those movement planes, right? Or those ranges of motion. So it's going to help increase mobility. So those are some more benefits of why we should be doing resistance training.
You can go on and on for days with the benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's talk a little bit real quick. Inside of the app, there's multiple different resistance training programs in there. Okay. The good thing about all the programs in the app, minus the specific one for running for a half marathon, right? All programs have the strength/resistance component. Okay. Montae, if someone was only going to do 2 to 3 days a week of resistance, what style would you want them to do? If they could only do 2 or 3 days a week, because maybe they're working 16-hour shifts, and they literally can't make it to the gym, but they can the 3 days that they're off, what would be something that you would tell them, hey, you could do this?
So in the app, it would be one of the at home, either body weights or minimal equipment, because anyone can do anything with the body weight. And there's different levels of programs, and the levels aren't necessarily like your actual experience with it. There's going to be more exercises per se, and then more exercises inside of those exercises. So at home, body weight is a good one. You can do it at home, no weights, and then minimal equipment. And that's for the people who are going to have the dumbbells at home, maybe a kettlebell, but don't have a lot, but minimal. And there's also a band one. It's pretty newer. I almost forgot that one. There's resistance band workouts, and they have a kit that can go with it, so you can do resistance bands at home.
And they make them full body. That's the cool thing about
Yep.
it. Right? So you could do push-ups, and you could do lunges, and you could use your kettlebell to swing. So you're working the entire body. So when we say 3 to 5 days resistance training, please understand that's a very broad statement, right? If you're only been able to do 2 sessions or 3 sessions, we would want to see multiple body parts done, or total body in those sessions. Versus if you're doing more 5 days, 6 days a week, that's where you can isolate movements. Okay. So where I picked up a little bit more a little bit more cardio conditioning for sport recently, so endurance training, I'm not lifting as much. So I make sure to do kind of more body parts, during those sessions. So for example, if I'm doing bench press this week, so I'm doing my press, I also did shoulder work in that. So I did, chest, shoulders, triceps, all in that routine. Okay. I actually deadlifted a little bit, and probably people like listen, they're like, "What?" It's the first time deadlifting since the incident, the surgery. Super light, right? It was only 135, but I did some deadlifts, some kettlebell swings, and that type of stuff. So working the posterior chain with that, and then I've still got to do my squats for the week, and I'm actually going to work that in via body weight at the end of today's run. So I've got an hour scheduled run today, and then what I'm going to do after that is add on 45 more minutes of running. But I'm going to do my little routine that keeps it easy for me. It's like run for a minute, 10 squats, run for 2 minutes, 20 squats. So I'm just going to combine that all into one and make sure that I get my lower body in the week also. So just an example from that aspect. Now, to wrap it up, when someone gives you resistance against resistance training, what I did there, but they give you a little bit of pushback. What is the talk track, or what do you say to individuals that are maybe reluctant to adding the resistance training in?
I'm gonna let you go first on this one.
Let me go first.
Yeah.
Other than showing them hundreds of progress photos, right?
Well,
Man, you just took it away. That was
and
it.
saying trust the price. If that's what you do, that's fine. You can run with it, right? Because I've done that before. But what would be the saying to it along with those progress photos?
I mean, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer here, but what I'm pretty much telling somebody, just because I have seen those progress photos, I've done it myself, is okay. Like I'm gonna meet them where they're at, but let them know, like, hey, if you want to maximize the results, and you're saying that you want X, Y, Z, then the way we're going to get there is to do the resistance. Like, it's to pretty much go out and do it. So yes, you can 100% go and do the cardio based exercises. You can do this, but when we are not seeing those results, or we're not feeling the way we want to feel, looking the way we want to look, we're going to need to eventually get this implemented into the game plan, because that is what's going to produce optimal results. So I'm pretty much just letting them, I'm going to tell them the truth.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we can do this, but if you actually want the optimal result and the goals that you told me you had, then we need to get this implemented, because it's been proven time and time again that this is what produces the best results.
yeah, I mean, you talk about the pictures. That's literally there's pictures of myself right through the phase of I'm just going to do some cardio because that's what I thought was going to work, versus when I started implementing the resistance training. So just speaking from my own experience and saying, hey, I get what you're saying. I was there once too, but at the same time, I've come a long way, and I've learned that that's not the best way. So just like you said, meet them where they're at, but also just try and educate, let them know why that resistance training is so important.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit on what we talked about with what we'll generally do is ask them, hey, show me a photo of someone you look like, right? And when they'll give us that photo, no matter who it is, they have in their mind who they want to look like, and then we'll be like, that person resistance trains.
Yeah.
And it's something like in the endurance space, I have a lot of conversations with, especially people who were once really like high level endurance athletes, and they're getting a little bit older, because they're starting to have some health problems. A lot of that health problems because they didn't do resistance training. So I'm gaining a lot of clientele here recently because I'm in that space again, right? And once again, I am not super fast, but I'm okay. And then what happens? There's conversations, because if I run by them or bike by them, they're like, are moving pretty good for a big guy, and then we end up having those conversations afterwards about the importance of muscle tissue and resistance training, when it comes to body composition and life in general. So all right, biggest takeaway, for the listeners, hey, if you're starting your wellness journey, resistance training is going to be very, very important. And I will wrap it up today with this. One of the hardest things that we do as online coaches is to be able to find out if you are pushing yourself and you have intent behind that resistance training. Okay. So no matter what program you're doing, I would tell you this: if it calls for sets of 25, and I'm just totally making a number up, then it should be difficult to do 25 reps. If it's easy for you to do 25 reps, I need you to add more reps to it or more sets there, so that you make sure that you are getting that result, or I'm sorry, facilitating the response of that workout that you want. Because we'll see a lot of times people say, well, I'm doing the program, Montae, I'm doing the program, Lacey, and it'll call for 4 sets of 10 bicep curls. And then we dig a little bit further and be like, well, what weight are you using for that? And it's like 5 pounds, right? Well, I did the weight and I did the reps, but you should be pushing yourself to where that fourth set of 10, for example, is very difficult to finish. Like you could only maybe do another rep, or maybe you can't do another rep. You fell at 9. That's okay. So that's what we talk about with intent behind it. Now, once again, we want that done safely. We want that to be done with good intent. And that's where we'll encourage a lot of people to work with personal trainers that are local to them so they can learn how to do these movements. But that's probably one of the biggest downfalls that I've seen in individuals when they go down a journey is they're not necessarily pushing themselves to their full capacity inside the resistance training because they just don't know better.
Yeah.
Agreed.
100%.
So awesome, guys. Once again, appreciate you coming on here. If you have just started your journey with us, do not hesitate to reach out to us. Send us a message on the app. We'll make sure that you are there. If you're not 100% sure about the app, send me a message. I'll put you in our Facebook group. You can kind of hang out, be silent about it. And then once you are ready to make a change, you can hop into the app. You can work with any of us inside of the team, and we'll make sure that you get taken care of and you do produce the results that you want. So appreciate you guys. For the listeners, if you have not rated the podcast, please rate the podcast. And as we have a goal of getting into the top 50 nutrition podcasts for this year, and then make sure you're sharing it with your friends. And once again, guys, I appreciate you for your time.
Thank y'all.
Thanks.